When we last got together, I told you that the definition of resolve was to have a definite, firm plan of action. Let me say that again, and let me ask it as a question. Do you have a definite, firm plan of action for each and every single day that you live? And if you do have a plan of action, what are the things that you're going to do in terms of steps or behaviors, or might I use the phrase best practices, to accomplish that objective and to achieve as many, if not all, of your goals as possible? Hi, everybody. Welcome to Resolve to Live Forward. I'm John Morrow. This is episode number 3. Glad you could join us. For those of you that don't know, you probably see over here my book. Yes, I'm a published author. It is a book that's available on Amazon, and you can get it in paperback, and it's also available in Kindle. I'm going to read from it because I want to talk now about the 7 letters that make up the word resolve. And these 7 letters are important because they represent, for me personally in this journey, 7 behaviors that, along with my late wife, we adopted back in late 2017 to begin the year 2018 into practice. I'm happy to say that after the year 2018, and even though there would be many, many difficult days in my life going forward, and times that I would be stuck, miserably, horribly stuck in the worst kind of muck possible, this particular word, this power word, and these 7 behaviors made a significant impact in my life, and they become adopted as part of my, what I call, power word for lifelong living. In my book, Resolve, Your Blueprint for Intentional Success, I open up with the following quote from Carrie Murphy. I'll be reading. Defeat is in your mind. Resilience is in your soul. The interesting thing about resilience is that there's a particular trait to it that you need to understand if you're going to consider adopting the behavior as one of the things that you do on a daily basis. The American Psychological Association defines resilience as, quote, successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. There's also a phrase in the definition in Merriam-Webster's dictionary where it says the ability to bounce back. Now, we don't bounce back from everything that happens to us. And resilience isn't just something that, for example, as it said there, deals with physical stamina. There is an emotional, mental stamina. Resilience is a mindset. What I hope to do for those of you that are stuck, or at least you feel to some degree that you're stuck, is I want to, in a sense, propose that we have a discussion right now, a conversation, and let's just, you and I, talk about the events that happen in our life that we can actually look at. And even if they were extraordinarily difficult, painful, perhaps even heartbreaking, they developed something in your personal character that gave you a more resilient mindset. They might have made you more resilient physically. You and I, for example, may be people who enjoy watching sports. We enjoy watching athleticism put on display by both very, very gifted athletes and other athletes who may not be as gifted as some, but they know how to work hard. They do the repetitive, necessary hard work and training to be able to perform at their very highest level. Every sport is unique. And in athleticism, it's not just a physical thing, it's also a mental thing. There has to be a mindset that really sees that I need to ingrain this so thoroughly through repetition that it becomes automatic. It's not a question of having to think it through. It becomes responsive. It becomes immediate. As soon as you receive the ball or you hear the snap count or whatever that particular situation is, you immediately respond because you're conditioned. You have repetitively done it. And if you have done the physical preparation, then you are able to physically do it too. However, like anything else, you can over time grow weary. So please know that resilience is not an inexhaustible source, but resilience is something that, at least in your mind, can keep you looking forward and moving forward and striving to move forward, while sometimes having to pause to rest and to recuperate, to recover, to recompose yourself, and to reprocess and perhaps maybe learn and apply new things and new skills and new ideas and new behaviors. Resilience is intentional. It doesn't come about by accident. It comes through intentionally doing something. A weightlifter, for example, begins building through what we call resistance. Weight lifting is a resistance athleticism. The resistance creates physical conditioning. As time goes on and resilience increases, the weight that you take on increases and you grow stronger and more capable of handling much more difficult tasks in the lifting process. But it's something that you have to constantly work at in order to maintain it. And the resilience is where you know that as long as you do the right stuff day in and day out, you will always have that measure of strength that puts you at a level that is better than perhaps maybe your competitors, or through the story of living, it just puts you at a stronger position in life in general. I'll give you a good example of resilience. For a long time now, I had been having my grass cut by a landscaper. But in recent times, the landscaper has had to move on to other things. And so I went out and bought myself a push mower, just a standard push mower. And this past Sunday, I got out there in the yard. The grass was up there quite a ways, and I set myself to the task of cutting my grass. At the end of the day, I felt good because I was satisfied that I accomplished my objectives. I also picked up some good tips and clues of what I need to do in order to make the process move even more smoothly. But one of the things that did happen was that the next day I discovered that there were parts of my body that were very, very sore, particularly my lower back. And it wasn't that I wasn't doing anything wrong or was doing anything wrong. It was just I was out of shape. I had not built up that resistance through the process of pushing that more to the point that there was a degree of resiliency in me. So what will I do? Since this is Florida where I live and our grass grows like lightning, I'll be cutting my grass again this weekend. And I'll get that mower out when the weather's good. And I know it's going to be hot and it'll be a good workout, but I will push that mower and cut my yard. Simple, probably not necessarily applicable to everybody, but that's just how resilience works. We keep at it. We persist. There are times, and I think you would agree, when you feel like it's best to stop what you're doing, to say, okay, this is not working. However, I believe that having resilience is important, not just in finding out what it is that we can and should be doing, but I think it's important to have resilience in finding out what it is that we need to stop doing and change. Let's talk about relationships for a moment. How you deal with people is as much about resilience as it is about your perception of them. And it's my feeling personally, and it might be yours as well, but I can only just toss out this as a potential idea. Do you ever find yourself in situations with people who seem, at least based upon your personality and mindset, are difficult to work with? I mean, some are just a little hard to work with, and then there are some that are just extraordinarily hard to work with, and then there are some that the very thought of even going and having to work with them puts all kinds of terrible thoughts into your mind. You're just really, I don't want to go there. Do you ever find yourself waking up and hating going to your job? Even though you do your job well, you just hate going because there are people and circumstances there that you don't like. You don't enjoy them. You don't look forward to that. You just want to do your job and do it well and be left alone. But if you have a micromanager, they're constantly looking over your shoulder. And with today's technology, they're probably mirroring your screen on your computer, and they're watching your keystrokes, and they're timing the work you do and how fast you do it and how correctly you do it and how you correct mistakes and find those mistakes timely or avoid them entirely. And you're constantly under this evaluation process. And then you're called into the office and they tell you this, 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 and this. Or maybe you've got someone that sits in proximity to you in the place that you work. I worked for years in a place where we had cubicles, and each cubicle, there were two stations. Now, the stations were short, they weren't high walls and everything, so you could stand up and see over to the next cubicle. But the thing about it is that you had somebody working there who had a different personality and a different set of behaviors and a different set of traits and style and cultural background, and had different tastes and likes. And then there were people around you and in the department, and then there were overseers, supervisors, leadership directors that also have responsibilities, and everybody was working with everybody. And if everybody was getting along, it was great. But what if they weren't getting along with each other? What if there were personal conflicts that had nothing to do with the job and everything to do with personalities? Where does resilience play a part in that? Sometimes what you have to do is you have to arrive at the point where you either decide there is a change that needs to be made, and if so, what kind of a change needs to occur. And often we say we need to change that person. What's harder is saying, forget about changing that person. How can I change myself? How can I develop a thicker skin? How can I develop a more open and accepting mindset? An attitude that says, yeah, they're different and they're not the easiest people in the world to get along with, but they have assets and they are good people. Now, let me pause for a moment and just remind you, because some of you are thinking this. Yeah, there are some people that no matter how hard you try, they're not interested in getting along with you. And there are even some that just plain don't like you. And it's hard to understand why. Or maybe you already figured out why. There are lots of reasons why we have divisiveness, why we have division, as I call it, why we have polarization, why we have dissension, conflict, and struggles. And this has been the bane of humanity for eons. When a person wants to be the person that is the most important person in the room or wherever it happens to be, that becomes an untenable situation. And you have to decide, do I confront? Do I simply acquiesce? Or do I walk away and simply quit and look for some other place to go? And of course, that's an oversimplification. But how can resilience help us? Well, resilience can help us, I think, starting here. Yeah, we want to take care of ourselves physically, but I want to talk about mindset, because mindset is everything in the coaching business and in what I do in talking with you. Your mindset is important here. Think about your situation. Why are you stuck? That's a question you have to ask yourself. Why are you stuck? Why are you having difficulty moving forward? What is it that is so difficult about your life and so mundane and routine that you have no enthusiasm or zest for getting up and going about what it is that you do well or could do better each and every single day of your life? What is hanging over you like a dark cloud? Where is that at in relationship to your thought process? What about your physical condition? Do you believe, as I do, that your whole body, holistically speaking, depends upon what goes on here between these temples in that brain? That is where all of your senses and your emotions and experiences of life are stored. Some for immediate recall, some for intermediate recall, and some stored long term, some stored consciously, a vast number of things stored unconsciously that can't be automatically recalled unless there's just the right kind of stimuli to suddenly bring that memory forward. But that's a topic for another day. The key is the mindset that you have, the mindset that we have. That mindset is going to determine every aspect of our lives. And if it is a resilience mindset, and don't confuse a resilient mindset with being hard-headed. I use the term hard-headed because that's what my grandmother used to say about me. You are so hard-headed, John Raymond. Well, she was right. I had my mind made up that I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I was rebellious. But as I grew and became more involved in a life of interpersonal relationships with people, because being with people is the single most important thing that we will do in our life, because that's really where we're going to develop our skills to be able to function and be successful and be relevant and useful and viable in this world. And that world sometimes is nothing more than your home and your community and the immediate job that you go to in the church or whatever it is that you're involved with right there in your own local sphere of influence. But the thing is, resilience is the capacity to take the things that come at you, whether good or bad, to learn from them, to figure out a way to either avoid the problem because it's not beneficial, change the way we do things so that we can find a better way to get things done, or create opportunities to build bridges and develop relationships and opportunities that don't just make our lives better, but make other people's lives better. This podcast is not about me. No, it's about you. It's about us. It's about what we have in common. Let's go back to the original premise of resolve. If you're stuck, if you find yourself in a place where you're going through the routines of life each and every single day, and it's just the same old, you can't wait. I'm going to use a standard 7-day week here. You work Monday through Friday. It's get up, same time, go to work, punch a clock, log in, whatever, do the job, do whatever happens at the job, deal with whatever comes at you at the job. Good days, bad days, days you feel good, days you feel okay, days you feel lousy. You go through the job Monday through Friday and you just want to survive the week because the weekend's coming. But then the weekends, how do you rest up? How do you get things done that you couldn't get done during the week because of the job? Where do you find time for you and for what matters in your life and those that matter to you? And all the while the weekend is winding down, those 48 hours of Saturday and Sunday, as you get closer to bedtime, you don't want to go to bed because, frankly, you don't look forward to Monday. And falling asleep, you fall asleep with thoughts of what will happen this coming week. Your resilience isn't there. You have no resolve. That's because you don't have a definite, firm plan of action as to how you can make your life better and what you can do to make the lives of the people that matter to you better. So start with the letter R. Resilience. The ability. Well, let me get the book again. Let me just open it back up here. All right. Let me read that again. American Psychological Association. Resilience is defined as successfully adapting to a difficult or challenging life experience or experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and the ability to adjust to external as well as internal demands. Adjust. There's a word there too, flexibility. Are you in a mindset where you can be flexible? Resilience says, okay, this is difficult, but there are two opportunities here. I can either find a way to get away from it and get out of it and get it to where it doesn't happen anymore, or I can figure out a way to adjust and be flexible and find a way to make it work. I would imagine, and I've talked about this before, because one of the things that a lot of us don't like to talk about is failures. We think of failures more as a defeatist type thing. Failures also cause us to fear consequences, and we start to worry about what might happen because of our failures and the potential for more failures. And so we do what I call borrowing trouble from tomorrow, which is a bad way to behave, because you really need to be fully focused and living as much as possible in now to make now the best possible now that you can have. I talk about failure because Thomas Edison, who is often cited as a quintessential example of how failure was not something that he saw as defeat, but he saw as a learning opportunity. And through persistent, repeated failures with different kinds of filaments, while he was trying to create this brainchild called the incandescent light bulb, there were hundreds upon hundreds of things that he tried that failed. He had resilience, though, and here's why. He had learned to train his mind to accept that that wasn't defeat or failure. It was simply not the right thing. So he needed to move on to the next thing. He realized that he was working and eliminating what didn't work in order to finally pin down what did work. Now, when you do something like 3 or 4 or 5 times, you may throw your hands up in the air and walk away. I remember, and if I didn't love the game, I would have walked away years ago. But I remember when I first learned how to play golf. I didn't do too bad with irons. But when it came to woods, drivers, gosh, I was terrible. I just couldn't figure out how to keep my eye on that ball and to swing properly and to make contact with that ball and hit that thing and drive it a couple of 100 yards down the fairway. But because I wouldn't quit and because I was resilient, I simply watched, studied, and learned and practiced and kept going back until the time finally arrived when I knew just exactly what the mechanics were, and I could picture in my mind just exactly how I needed to hit it. Now, there is still obviously the physical process, mind and body, in order to make the swing work and to hit the ball properly. But it was through persistence that I was able to find a way to hit that golf ball and to hit it with effectiveness. Same thing was true with different irons and with putting. All of these things were part of a process of going back and doing it again until you get it right. That takes resilience. Now, if you're stuck, there's a lot of unanswered questions, and this podcast doesn't answer all those questions. This podcast is purely for the purposes of helping you find a way to begin to change the way you think through your mindset and start the process of problem solving in order to find a way to get unstuck, shift, and move forward into a more vibrant and meaningful life. You have to want that. That's why resolve is so important, because resolve is a driving force. You have a definite, firm plan of action, and that's what you live out each and every single day of your life to the best of your ability. And if you do it continually, it becomes hardwired into your automatic brain. These behaviors that I call personal best practices that are embodied in the 7 letters in resolve are all essential to fulfilling and achieving the end result of that definite, firm plan of action. Since the letter R is the first letter in resolve, we'll talk about resilience, but it doesn't really matter what order you do these things in. What matters is that we do them all every day. So resilience just happens to be the first thing, because in the acronym for resolve, the letter R is for resilience. So I offer this request of you for your purposes and for your sake. Let's once again remember what the definition of resolve is. You want a definite, firm plan of action, and you want that to be hardwired into who you are. You know what you want to do. You know what you want to achieve. You know that you want something better than what you currently have. You know that you want to get unstuck. You know that you want to shift out of stuck into unstuck and into a more vibrant, meaningful, purpose-driven life. Resolve. Keep it at the forefront. Look up the definition of resilience. Look at several. Ask yourself this question: what are things that I can do physically, mentally, financially, spiritually, if you're into that? What are things that I can do from a dietary point of view, from an activity point of view, from a relationship point of view, What are things that I can do to increase my resilience, not to be stiff and unyielding, but to be capable of coping, bouncing back, having flexibility, learning to adjust, how to shift and adapt and pivot. These are the things that make life better because you learn not to become hard and fast, set in your ways. That's a two-edged sword. If you're set in your ways because you have resolve and you have a resilience factor built into your life, just to start with the letter R in resolve, then if you're set in that, you actually have a mindset that is open to the challenge of growing. And as we go forward, I'll talk about the power of a growth mindset in developing these tools personally in your life. Again, if you're interested in knowing more about the 7 behaviors that make up the letters RESOLVE, my book is available for $14.99 in paperback, and you can find it in the Amazon bookstore. It's written, of course, by John Morrow, DTM. This is the book, Resolve. And this is the podcast, Resolve to Live Forward. This is episode number 3. It comes to an end. I'm thankful for the opportunity. I will tell you a couple of quick things. You can visit me on my website at johnmorrowcoaching.com. That's johnmorrowcoaching.com. That's John, JOHN, MORROW, coaching.com. Or you can email me, John at johnmorrowcoaching.com. This particular podcast is also available on my YouTube channel under the same name, John Morrow. Thank you for joining me. We so far have talked about the power word resolve, and we have touched on the very, very first word in the acronym for resolve, the letter R for resilience. I plan, by the grace of God, to join you again around this time next week, where we'll talk about the first of 2 E's in the word resolve, the second letter of resolve, the letter E. More about that when we get together. Thanks for being with me. It's always a pleasure, an honor, and a delight to be your guest. Let's do this together. Let's get to the why, and let's make a difference in our life that will change us for the better. For now, so long, and have a great, great day.